Hi, this is John again, the owner and developer of VectorDecks. The next tool we're going to introduce to you is the beam tool. If you follow the instructions as shown in the Getting Started with VectorDecks, in order to have access to any of the tools, you'll need to make sure that you're working in the VectorDecks workspace first, and then let's close this document and open a new. Open up a document using VectorDecks stationery. Let me first pop in a basic simple deck frame. What I'm going to do here is use Vectorworks rectangular tool and define a 12 by 20 deck. Let's soften these edges a bit. The chamfer tool. And let's go ahead and convert that using VectorDecks convert tool to a deck frame. Now let's go ahead and select that VectorDecks beam tool. You'll see it over here in the palette. The little icon is a beam. Go ahead and click on it. Now the VectorDecks beam tool is a line tool, so it requires just two clicks. One click at the beginning point, and the second at its ending. And then it'll automatically produce and create this beam for you where you place those clicks. Now you can edit like any line tool. You can just select it and grab its little handle on the end to edit either end. If you needed another beam in this, you can either draw one again the same way, or very easily just what I do sometimes is just option drag that beam tool. So now we have two beams. Now in the beams object information palette, you're going to see some basic parameters that you can go ahead and change on any beam that you've selected. For example here, let's change that post on center to 120 inches and the footing diameter 16 inches. As you see here, this beam has changed to those requirements and this beam has stayed the same. Now with Use Deck Info button checked, it'll always draw the beam in 3D directly underneath the sun deck frame. Let me show you that. I'm going to convert the sun deck to 3D. Let's go to a right view so we can see both beams. And as you see here, the beams are finishing directly under the sun deck frame. This lower line is trim line. So as long as that beam is set to draw using the sun deck information, it will draw properly. Now you can change that if you turned, let's take that front one and let's turn off Use Deck Info. I'll show you an example here. Now let's go back into the frame and let's change those joist settings to 2x10s instead of 2x8s. That'll change this information. Now you'll see that this is using sun deck info, so it adjusts, but the front didn't use it, so it stayed the same. Now you can always snap to it. If you use deck info, it'll automatically adjust to that deck information. So when you make any other changes with the sun deck frame, it's going to go ahead and change all your other components automatically. Now you can always have complete control over an individual beam by turning that off. And then you could set, for example, here we'll go and change the deck height of the individual beam to 72. It'll change, but the deck height is still 60 inches, and this one's still set to that Use Deck Info. So the changes that are made on anything that's turned, has Use Deck information turned off, will not pick up any information from that sun deck. Also, let's go to top view here. I'll show you where, because this is turned off, you have access to the independent control over the post set-ins, and that's the distance from the outside edge of the deck to the outside face of that post. Let's change this to 24. And as you see, it automatically will move the post in on both sides that distance and then equally span the individual post. Now once you turn that back on, it's going to snap back to the settings that the sun deck is. Also, by having that enabled, and when you click on your beam settings, you don't have a whole lot of control because all these settings are also available on your frame. But if you turn that off, now you have the capability of changing the type of beam. Let's use a 2x12. As you see, it's going to lengthen that beam. You can go with a 4x4 or 6x6. You have control over the post settings here. Let's make that 24. And also, if you don't see anything change here, I have this apply button. Yeah, let's make it a triple beam instead of a double. Now we'll apply those changes. And you'll see how it'll appear here on a smaller scale before you make the changes in the drawing itself. You can also, again, with use deck of information turned off, I'll turn it off again, you can trim the beam out, give it a finish you'd like. I'm going to make this a white. Post wrapped in a white trim. You can turn off the post cap or the beam cap. And then when you go back to the drawing, again, this was controlled independently. It made those changes. Let's do a right view and show you too. It made those changes to that beam, not any of the other components on the deck. Again, once you turn that use deck information back on, it's going to conform to whatever the deck setting is. Now remember, all those beam controls are in the sun deck frame. I'll show you that. Go ahead and click on the frame and sun deck settings, and you'll see that beams button. So if you have multiple beams and you want them all to change, you can do that in the sun deck frame in this window. For example, if you want all the beams to be trimmed out, and we'll give that a white finish. Keep everything else the same. Click OK. Let's go back into 3D here. You see they changed, both of them changed. That's that real advantage of that parent-child type system. Any changes made here will be made and adjust both beams. It's very useful if you have multiple beams in one deck. You don't have to make the settings yourself. Even that the set-in, if you wanted all the beams to have the same set-in from the outside edge, you can change that. Let's make this 24. Click OK. And everything adjusts to all the beams at the same time. So that's pretty much it with respect to the beam tool. It's fairly simple, just click and drag, two-click type of operation, but you have a lot of power either in the frame or in each individual beam to make any changes.